The cantina was dark and smelled like burnt circuits and old metal. Kael'thas sat alone in the corner, nursing a drink she did not really want. She was a dragon woman, old and tired, with scales that had once shone bright gold but now looked dull and faded. Her wings were folded against her back, and her claws clicked slowly against the glass table. Nobody paid attention to her anymore. The galaxy had moved on. She had become invisible, which was perhaps the worst thing that could happen to a dragon who had once ruled entire star systems. She watched the people around her come and go. Young traders, desperate pilots, workers looking for quick jobs. They all seemed to have purpose, direction, something to chase. Kael'thas had stopped chasing things long ago. What was the point? She had already lived 3 centuries. She had already won and lost more than most beings could imagine in their entire lifetimes. That was when she noticed him. He was human, average height, with dark hair that stuck up in odd directions. His hands were covered in black grease stains that no amount of washing could remove, the permanent mark of someone who worked with machines. He sat at a table near the bar, sketching frantically on a piece of torn napkin, muttering to himself while a board service droid stood beside him, occasionally refilling his empty water glass. The human's eyes were bright with something Kael'thas had almost forgotten existed. Passion. Real, burning passion for something. "That design won't work," the droid said flatly, its mechanical voice carrying no emotion. "The structural integrity would fail under standard acceleration forces." "No, no, no," the human said, shaking his head firmly. His name tag said Oliver. "See, if you angle the intake vanes like this, the stress distributes differently. You're thinking about it wrong." Kael'thas found herself standing up. She did not remember deciding to stand. Her legs simply carried her across the cantina floor, and before she could think about whether this was a good idea, she was sitting across from the human named Oliver. He looked up, startled, and his eyes grew wide when he saw her scales. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, pushing the napkin away as if ashamed of it. "I didn't mean to be rude or anything. I was just thinking out loud." Kael'thas settled into the chair across from him. She was too old to care about comfort or proper etiquette anymore. "Show me," she said simply. Oliver hesitated for only a moment before spreading the napkin out flat. His hands were shaking slightly. "Look, I know everyone thinks I'm crazy. I've been told this 1,000 times. But I know it's possible. I know I can retrofit old freighter ships, the ones nobody wants anymore, the ones that are headed for scrap metal. I can make them into something better. Something faster. Something that actually works properly." He pointed to various parts of his sketch, explaining his ideas with an intensity that reminded Kael'thas of someone she had known long ago. Someone who believed that anything was possible if you just worked hard enough. "The problem," Oliver continued, "is that I need space. A real workshop. And money for materials. And equipment that I can't afford on my own. I've been saving for years but I'm still nowhere close. So I keep working on ships for other people, making small repairs, and all the while I'm thinking about what I could do if I just had the chance." Kael'thas studied the napkin carefully. The design was rough, clearly sketched by someone without formal training, but there was something about it that made sense. Something elegant hidden beneath the hasty lines. "What if you had that chance?" she asked quietly. Oliver laughed. It was a bitter sound. "Yeah, and what if I had a dragon backing me with unlimited resources? What if the council suddenly decided humans were worth investing in? What if pigs could fly? Life doesn't work like that." Kael'thas was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised them both. "I will buy you a garage." Oliver stared at her. "What? A garage? A workshop? A place where you can build your ships?" Kael'thas stood up, her old bones creaking slightly. "I have money. More money than I could spend in another 100 lifetimes. And I have nothing to do with it. You seem to have a dream. I will buy you the space to chase it." "You're serious," Oliver said, but it was not a question. "Completely serious," Kael'thas replied. She pulled a small device from her pocket. "Give me your contact information. I will have my people search for appropriate property." 3 weeks later, Oliver received a message. A location had been found. An abandoned industrial complex on the moon of Kepler 9b. The property was large, already structured for manufacturing work, and completely empty. The sale had been completed. The garage was his. Kael'thas had made the purchase without even visiting the site in person. She had simply looked at images on a screen, decided it would do, and authorized the transaction. The real estate agent who handled the sale seemed almost relieved to be rid of the property, as if he had been waiting for someone foolish enough to buy something so old and seemingly worthless. Oliver moved into the garage a week later with everything he owned packed into a single transport crate. His few possessions seemed tiny in the vast, empty space. His grandfather's old toolbox. A blanket that had belonged to his mother. Data pads containing years of sketches and calculations. A small sleeping pod he had salvaged from a derelict ship. He stood alone in the middle of the empty garage and felt something he had not felt in years. Oh. Kael'thas, meanwhile, had already forgotten about her impulsive gesture. She had returned to her estate, returned to her quiet existence, and moved on to other matters. Dragons had long memories, but they also had the ability to compartmentalize, to put things aside and forget about them for years at a time. She would not forget for long. Fate, it seemed, had other plans. Oliver began to work. He began to tear down walls and assess the structure. He began to dream about what he could build in this massive space. And deep beneath his feet, in the darkness of the earth, secrets waited to be discovered. Secrets that would change everything. Oliver had been working in the garage for 7 days straight. He barely slept, stopping only to eat the simple food that arrived in delivery boxes from the small settlement nearby. His body ached from the constant physical work, his hands were raw and bleeding in places, but he did not care. For the first time in his life he had a real space to work in. A space that was entirely his own. The first week was dedicated to clearing away the rubble and junk that filled the massive structure. The previous owners, whoever they were, had left everything behind. Broken equipment lay scattered across the floor like the bones of dead machines. Rusted metal shelves lined the walls, empty of everything except dust and the shells of long-dead insects. The ceiling had holes in it where the rain had come through, and the walls were covered in dark stains that Oliver tried not to think about too carefully. But underneath all that decay he could see the bones of something great. The structure was solid. The foundation was deep and strong. The walls, though weathered, were clearly built to last. Whatever this place had been, it had been built with care and intention. Oliver could feel it in the very structure of the building itself. On the 8th day everything changed. Oliver was working in the western section of the garage, near the thick concrete wall that separated this space from the solid rock beyond. He had decided to cut through the wall to expand his work area. The task was tedious and difficult. He used a plasma cutter, an old tool that his grandfather had given him years ago. The beam was hot and bright and it slowly burned through the thick concrete. Dust filled the air. Oliver wore a mask, but the particles still irritated his eyes. He was tired. He was thinking about stopping for the day when the plasma cutter suddenly broke through the other side. The beam cut through empty space. Oliver pulled back immediately, confused. According to his understanding of the building's layout, solid rock should have been on the other side of that wall. Rock and nothing else. But something was wrong with his assumptions. He used his hands to tear away the loose concrete around the hole he had made. The work was dangerous, pieces of concrete crumbling and falling, sharp edges threatening to slice open his skin. But Oliver did not stop. Something was calling to him. Something beneath this building wanted to be found. The hole grew larger. Large enough to put his head through and look inside. What Oliver saw made his breath catch in his throat. It was a passage. A long, dark passage that extended down into the earth. And more than that, it was not natural. The walls were smooth metal, polished despite the years of neglect. Lights ran along the ceiling, most of them dark, but some still faintly glowing with a pale blue luminescence. It was technology. Ancient technology. Oliver worked for another 2 hours, enlarging the hole until it was large enough for him to climb through. His heart was pounding in his chest the entire time. He knew he should call for help, should tell someone what he had found. But something made him want to see this alone first. Something made him want to understand what this was before he shared it with the world. He squeezed through the opening and dropped down to the metal floor below. The passage was cold, much colder than the garage above. His breath came out in white clouds. The lights along the ceiling brightened as he walked forward, sensing his movement, responding to his presence after years of waiting in the darkness. The passage opened into something massive. Oliver stepped into a chamber so vast that his mind struggled to comprehend its size. It was a factory. Not a small workshop or manufacturing space, but a real factory, the kind that only the largest corporations on the wealthiest planets could afford to maintain. Massive machines hung from the ceiling on mechanical arms. Assembly stations lined the walls in perfect rows. Banks of computers and servers rose from the floor, their lights still blinking slowly, as if they were merely sleeping instead of truly dead. And everywhere Oliver looked, there were blueprints. They hung on the walls, they covered the tables, they were stored in transparent cases that protected them from the passage of time. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. Each one carefully drawn, carefully labeled, carefully preserved in stasis fields that still hummed with power despite all the years. Oliver picked one up with shaking hands. The date on it read 2847 CE. More than 2,000 years old. The designs were for ships. Ships of impossible elegance and sophistication. Ships that made every vessel Oliver had ever worked on look like children's toys. The engineering was beautiful, each line and curve serving a clear purpose. The precision was extraordinary, the kind of precision that could only be achieved by a civilization at the height of its technological power. He did not hear Emma arrive until she spoke. "Oliver? Your door was open and I didn't see you upstairs, so I thought I'd—" She stopped. She was standing in the passage, looking at the vast chamber that stretched before them both. Her hand slowly rose to cover her mouth. Emma was Oliver's oldest friend. They had studied engineering together, worked on countless projects together, dreamed together about what they might accomplish if they ever got the chance. Now they both stood in the presence of something that neither of them had ever imagined could exist. "Emma," Oliver said quietly, "I think I found something." She walked slowly toward him, her eyes wide, taking in the vast space, the ancient machines, the thousands of carefully preserved blueprints. When she reached him, she took one of the blueprints gently from his hands and looked at it. Tears began to stream down her face. "This is impossible," she whispered. "These designs, they're from before the silence. Before everything fell apart. We should have lost all of this knowledge. We should have forgotten it completely." "Someone did not want us to forget," Oliver said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn on him. "Someone hid this. On purpose. They buried it here on purpose." The question was why. And more importantly, who had wanted to keep this knowledge hidden from humanity for so many years? Neither of them knew the answer. But both of them knew that their lives had just changed forever. The discovery was kept secret for exactly 17 days. Oliver and Emma told no one. They simply worked in silence, cataloging the blueprints, testing the computers, trying to understand what they had found. They barely left the hidden factory. They slept in shifts, one of them always watching, as if they were afraid the place might disappear if they were not careful. But secrets have a way of spreading, especially in communities where people work closely together and talk freely over meals and drinks. On the 18th day, a message arrived through an encrypted channel. It came from someone whose identity was hidden, whose location was unknown. The message contained only a few words: "I know what you found. We need to talk." Oliver felt his stomach drop when he read those words. Emma gripped his arm tightly. "We should leave," she said. "We should take the important blueprints and go. Find somewhere safe." But Oliver knew that running would accomplish nothing. Whoever had sent the message already knew about the factory. Running would only make them look guilty of something. So instead, Oliver sent a response. "Who are you? How do you know?" The reply came within minutes. "My name is Charlotte. My grandmother built that factory. Meet me at the old transit station at midnight. Come alone." Oliver wanted to bring Emma with him, but Charlotte had specifically asked him to come alone. He argued with Emma about it for an hour, but in the end she accepted his reasoning. If something went wrong, at least one of them would survive to tell the story. The transit station was empty and dark when Oliver arrived at midnight. His heart was racing, his hands were sweating, and every nerve in his body screamed at him to run. This felt like a trap. It felt like walking into danger with his eyes wide open. Then he saw her. She was sitting on a bench near the center of the station. An old woman, impossibly old, with white hair that fell to her shoulders and eyes that had seen things that Oliver could not imagine. She wore simple clothes, nothing fancy, nothing that would attract attention. But there was something about her that commanded respect. "Oliver Chin," she said, though he had never told her his name. "I have been waiting a very long time to meet someone like you." Oliver sat down slowly on the bench beside her. "Who are you really?" "My name is Charlotte Voss," the old woman said. "My grandmother was Helena Voss. She was one of the greatest engineers who ever lived. She helped build that factory beneath your garage more than 2,000 years ago." Oliver felt the world tilt slightly. "That is impossible. No one lives that long." "No," Charlotte agreed. "My grandmother did not live that long. But she had a daughter who had a daughter who had a daughter, going back through the centuries. I am her great-great-great-great-granddaughter. I am the keeper of her memory and the guardian of her secret." Charlotte pulled out an old photograph, so old that it was barely legible. It showed a young woman standing in front of a blueprint, smiling at the camera. "That is Helena," Charlotte said softly. "That is my grandmother. She was brilliant. She believed that humanity had a destiny among the stars. She believed that we could create things that would make us equal to any civilization in the galaxy. What happened? Oliver asked. Why was the factory buried? Charlotte was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was sad. The great silence did not happen by accident, Oliver. It was deliberately caused by others who feared what humanity might become. There were civilizations that saw humanity's potential and decided that we could not be allowed to reach it. They conspired together. They sabotaged our technology. They cut off our communication with distant colonies. They made sure that our greatest achievements would be forgotten. But the factory, Oliver said. They did not find it. No, Charlotte said. My grandmother was clever. Before the silence came, she hid the factory. She created a secret beneath a building that was deliberately made to seem worthless and abandoned. She preserved everything, all the knowledge, all the designs, in case humanity ever got a second chance. She hoped that someday someone like you would find it. Someone who would not give up on humanity's dreams. Before Oliver could respond, his communication device buzzed. An emergency alert. Official investigators were asking questions about the garage. Someone had reported suspicious activity. They wanted to inspect the property. Oliver felt panic rising in his chest. We need to move everything. We need to hide it again before they... No, Charlotte said firmly. She stood up with surprising strength for someone so old. You cannot hide it. That time is over. You must defend it. You must show the world what your grandmother left for us. You must prove to them that humanity's potential cannot be buried forever. But they will destroy it, Oliver said. They will not want this knowledge to exist. Perhaps, Charlotte said. But not if you have allies. Not if you have someone powerful protecting you. That was when Oliver realized that he needed help from someone unexpected. Someone who had the power and the connections to stand between him and those who wanted the factory destroyed. He needed Kael'thas. The old dragon woman had given him the garage as a gift, an impulsive gesture that now seemed like destiny. Oliver quickly sent her a message requesting an urgent meeting. To his surprise, she responded immediately. She would come to the garage within the hour. When Kael'thas arrived, she moved through the facility with the careful steps of someone who had lived for centuries and knew when they were looking at something important. She examined the factory silently, running her clawed hand along the ancient machines, studying the blueprints with focused attention. Finally, she turned to Oliver and Charlotte. This is old magic, she said quietly. This is the magic of a civilization at its height. And you, she looked directly at Oliver, you are meant to bring it back. Will you help us? Oliver asked. Kael'thas spread her great wings, a gesture of power and commitment. I did not know why I was meant to buy this garage, she said. But now I understand. Yes, Oliver. I will help you. I will stand between you and anyone who tries to destroy this gift from your ancestors. For the first time since they had made the discovery, Oliver felt hope. The work began in secret, though it could not stay secret for long. Oliver assembled a team carefully, choosing only people he trusted completely. Emma was the first, of course. She had always been there, and her skills in system design were extraordinary. Then came Thomas, a quiet man with strong hands and an even stronger mind for structural engineering. Rebecca joined next, bringing her expertise in power systems and energy distribution. There were others too. Daniel, who understood ancient technology better than anyone alive. Sophie, whose gift for problem-solving seemed almost magical. And finally, William, a master craftsman who could take Oliver's designs and turn them into physical reality. 7 people in total. 7 humans working beneath a dragon woman's protection, racing against time to build something impossible. The hidden factory became their entire world. They worked in shifts, never all sleeping at the same time, always making progress. The ancient machines still functioned, responsive to commands given through interfaces that Oliver and Emma slowly learned to operate. The factory was designed to manufacture ship components with a precision that modern technology simply could not match. Look at this, Daniel said one morning, holding up a completed thruster unit. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. No imperfections, no variations. Manufactured 2,000 years ago and better than anything we could make today. The team used these ancient components as templates, learning from them, understanding the engineering principles that had guided their creation. They combined old knowledge with new understanding, creating something that had never existed before. A ship that honored humanity's buried past while incorporating everything they had learned in the long centuries since. Oliver named it Remembrance. The ship took shape slowly, section by section. The hull came first, built from materials that Kael'thas provided through channels that Oliver did not question. The metal was strong and light, with properties that seemed almost impossible. When Oliver asked where it came from, Kael'thas simply smiled and said, "Dragons have resources that younger species know nothing about." The design was revolutionary. Every curve, every angle, every component served a clear purpose. There was elegance in it, beauty hidden beneath function. Rebecca worked on the power core, integrating ancient technology with modern understanding. The core would generate energy far beyond what standard ships could produce, allowing Remembrance to travel faster and farther than any vessel in current use. Thomas led the work on the structural systems, ensuring that every piece fit together perfectly. His attention to detail was extraordinary. He would spend hours examining joints and connections, making tiny adjustments that no one else would ever notice. "But I will know they are there," he would say. "And that is what matters." Sophie designed the navigation systems using principles from the ancient blueprints that no one had thought to implement in thousands of years. The system would allow Remembrance to calculate paths through space with accuracy that would make standard navigation computers look primitive. Daniel worked on preserving and integrating the ancient artificial intelligence systems that still functioned in the hidden factory. This AI had been designed to assist with manufacturing and problem-solving. Carefully integrated into Remembrance's systems, it would give the ship capabilities that no other vessel possessed. William took all of these components and made them real. His hands shaped metal and crystal, assembled delicate instruments, and created something that transcended mere machinery. Remembrance was becoming not just a ship, but a work of art. 6 months passed. Then 7. The work was hard and endless, but the team never wavered. They knew what they were building. They understood that this ship represented humanity's future, or at least the possibility of one. Kael'thas visited often. She brought supplies, yes, but more importantly she brought something else: protection. When corporate inspectors arrived to investigate the garage, they saw only a respected dragon overseeing a legitimate mechanical operation. They saw nothing unusual. Kael'thas's presence was like a shield, invisible but powerful. One evening, after a particularly long day of work, Oliver found himself standing alone in the main assembly chamber. Remembrance was nearly complete, her hull gleaming under the lights of the factory. She was beautiful. She was perfect. She was everything Oliver had ever dreamed of creating. Kael'thas found him there, standing motionless before the ship. "You have done well," the dragon woman said, her voice soft and thoughtful. "Better than I expected. Better than anyone could have expected." "I do not know if I could have done this without you," Oliver said quietly. "Without your protection, they would have destroyed everything." Kael'thas settled her massive form beside him, her wings folding carefully so as not to disturb anything. "I did not know why I was meant to buy this garage," she said. "When I made that impulsive decision in the cantina, I thought it was merely a whim. But now I understand. Some things are meant to happen. Some meetings are written in the stars themselves." "What happens now?" Oliver asked. "When the ship is finished, what do we do?" "We fly," Kael'thas said simply. "We fly to the Galactic Council. We do not run or hide. We go directly to them and show them what you have accomplished." Oliver felt fear ripple through him. "They will try to destroy it." "Perhaps," Kael'thas agreed. "But they will have to go through me to do so. And I assure you many have tried that before. None have succeeded." The final weeks of construction were frenzied with activity. Every system was tested and retested. Every component was verified. Emma and Rebecca worked together to ensure that the power core would function perfectly without any risk of failure. Thomas performed one final inspection of the entire structure, checking every single joint and connection. Daniel and Sophie tested the navigation and artificial intelligence systems repeatedly until they functioned flawlessly. William completed the finishing touches, small details that made Remembrance beautiful as well as functional. A name etched into the hull. Windows positioned to catch the light in a particular way. Colors and patterns that honored human history while celebrating human achievement. On the day of completion, the entire team stood together before Remembrance. They did not speak. There was nothing to say. They had created something magnificent. They had brought human potential back to life. They had proven that genius, once created, could never truly be destroyed. Charlotte arrived to witness the completion. She stood in silence for a long time, tears streaming down her old face, as if she were seeing her grandmother's dreams made real at last. "She would be proud," Charlotte said finally. "Helena would be so very proud." Oliver placed his hand on Remembrance's hull. The metal was warm beneath his fingers, alive with power, ready to fly. Tomorrow they would begin the journey to the Galactic Council. Tomorrow everything would change. But for now, they simply stood together in the presence of their creation, understanding that they had accomplished something that no one had believed possible. The journey to the Galactic Council station took 3 weeks. Oliver piloted Remembrance himself, with Emma monitoring the navigation systems beside him. The ship moved through space with a grace that made every other vessel look clumsy by comparison. Faster than standard ships, more efficient, more responsive. Every system worked perfectly, exactly as it had been designed to work 2,000 years ago. Behind them in secure storage were copies of every blueprint, every design, every piece of evidence that proved humanity's hidden history. Kael'thas stood on the bridge with Oliver, her ancient eyes focused on the distant station that grew larger as they approached. "Are you certain about this?" Emma asked. "We could still turn back. We could hide the ship somewhere safe. We could disappear." "No," Oliver said firmly. "We cannot hide anymore. Hiding is what got us into this situation in the first place. My ancestors hid their knowledge to protect it, but that meant humanity lost it. That meant we forgot who we were. We cannot make that mistake again." The Galactic Council station was massive, a structure that had orbited the same location in space for 10,000 years. It was home to representatives from 53 different species, each with its own seat of power. Humans had only recently been granted a single representative seat, and even that had come only after centuries of begging and negotiation. Oliver sent a message ahead requesting an audience. The response was formal and dismissive. The council would meet with him, yes, but only as a courtesy to a minor species seeking to present grievances. He would be given 30 minutes. No more. 30 minutes to change the course of history. The council chamber was vast and intimidating. Representatives from dozens of species sat in elevated seats, looking down at Oliver from their positions of power. Humans were represented by an elderly diplomat named Harrison, who looked nervous and uncomfortable. He had not been briefed on what Oliver was about to present. Oliver walked to the center of the chamber with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to lose. Behind him, his team wheeled in a display unit containing copies of the ancient blueprints. He activated it, and images bloomed across the chamber's screens. "Members of the council," Oliver began, his voice steady and clear. "I am here to present evidence of a historical truth that has been deliberately hidden from my people for over 2,000 years. I am here to prove that humanity is not a minor spacefaring species that recently joined galactic civilization. I am here to prove that we are descendants of a great civilization, a civilization that created technologies that rival anything in existence today." The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted questions and objections. But Oliver continued, displaying blueprint after blueprint, each one more extraordinary than the last. He showed them designs for ships, for weapons, for cities, for machines that performed functions no current species had ever achieved. "These blueprints are dated," Oliver said loudly, overriding the chaos. "They are dated to 2847 Common Era, more than 2,000 years ago. They were created by humans. By my ancestors. And they were deliberately buried and hidden by forces that did not want humanity to remember its potential." A delegate from a reptilian species stood up, anger evident in her posture. "This is fraud. You are presenting fabrications." "No," Kael'thas said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. She stepped forward and the entire chamber fell silent. Dragons commanded respect through their presence alone. "I have examined these blueprints. I have seen the manufacturing facility where they were created. I have studied the technology. This is not fabrication. This is truth that has been suppressed." The chamber fell into shocked silence. A dragon, testifying in support of humans, was unprecedented. The council had no protocol for it. Over the following hours, Oliver presented everything. He showed them images of the hidden factory. He presented energy readings that proved the ancient manufacturing equipment still functioned. He described the artificial intelligence systems that had been preserved beneath the garage. He laid out the evidence systematically, methodically, leaving no room for doubt. Emma presented technical analyses. Thomas displayed structural diagrams showing how the ancient engineering principles surpassed modern understanding. Rebecca demonstrated power generation calculations that seemed impossible. Daniel explained the historical timeline, showing when the Great Silence had occurred and what it had actually been, a deliberate sabotage of human civilization. By the time Oliver finished his presentation, 30 minutes had become 4 hours. The chamber was silent with shock. Then delegates began asking questions. Real questions, not dismissive ones. Some were skeptical, but others were genuinely fascinated. The delegate from the Kepler Collective requested access to the blueprints for scientific study. The representative from the Alliance of Three asked about the energy generation systems. Even the delegate who had accused Oliver of fraud seemed to be reconsidering. The council voted that same evening. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would be granted provisional status as an advanced spacefaring civilization pending independent verification of the claims. A team of scientists from multiple species would be dispatched to examine the hidden factory. The blueprints would be preserved and studied. And most importantly, humanity would be given full access to ancient records that had been sealed away, records of human achievements that span millennia before the silence. News of the revelation spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Within weeks, other hidden facilities began to surface. On Mars, scientists discovered preserved records in ancient bunkers. On Europa's moons, explorers found manufacturing centers similar to the one beneath Oliver's garage. On distant colonies, evidence of advanced human civilization emerged from beneath layers of dirt and forgotten time. The galaxy's understanding of history changed overnight. Species that had dismissed humanity for centuries began to reconsider. Trade agreements were renegotiated. Political alliances shifted. Humans were no longer a curiosity. They were recognized as a civilization with achievements and potential that could not be ignored. Oliver did not become a military commander or a political leader. He remained what he had always been, an engineer. But he became the most respected engineer in the galaxy. People came from across known space to study the ship Remembrance, to learn from its design, to understand the principles that had guided its creation. The garage on Kepler 9b became a museum and research center. Scholars worked there continuously, cataloging the factory's contents, learning from the ancient designs, applying those principles to modern challenges. It became a place of pilgrimage for those who wanted to understand humanity's true potential. Kael'thas lived to see the change take hold. She lived to see humans treated as equals among the stars. She died peacefully in her sleep, knowing that her impulsive decision in a cantina had altered the course of galactic history. Charlotte lived long enough to see her grandmother's life work vindicated. She died with a smile on her face, secure in the knowledge that the buried truth would never be forgotten again.